of Texas Christian University, a murder mystery is unfolding.
Was this someone random?
A young woman found strangled in her upscale Fort Worth home.
As a young woman, who says that couldn't have been me?
Now investigators are working to figure out who killed this church-going sorority girl and why. A criminal court judge gunned down in cold blood.
We heard 2 loud gunshots.
Coming to the aid of a friend shot right outside of his home.
They exchanged words with the offender before he was fatally shot multiple times.
Now security cameras the judge urged his neighbors to install could play a role in catching his murderer. Nearly 3 years after her disappearance,
A roller coaster of emotions.
a doctor is now charged with killing his girlfriend and the mother of his child, a nurse.
I look forward for justice for my, beautiful sister.
What prosecutors say that physician bought after she disappeared that raised red flags. A teenager with special needs dies in a home fire.
Terrible tragedy.
But investigators say this was no accident, charging the boy's parents with murder.
They used the fire to try to cover that death up.
Now prosecutors say they got the idea from an Oscar-winning movie.
Log must have rolled out onto the floor.
Good evening. I'm Jean Casares in for Ashley Banfield. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. This is Primetime Justice. We do have some breaking news tonight coming out of Chicago. Police are saying they have made an arrest in the murder of criminal court judge Raymond Miles. Behind bars tonight, 37-year-old Joshua Smith. He is the first to be charged in connection with the shooting. We will bring you more on this story in just a few minutes. But first, no matter how nice, no matter how safe you think your neighborhood is, no one is immune from crime or violence. In the shadow of Texas Christian University in Fort Worth, 22-year-old Molly Matheson was found strangled to death in the garage apartment she rented. It is not a neighborhood where neighbors say violent crimes like this happen.
As a young woman, she's only 2 years older than I am, or was. And so it's crazy to think that, who says that couldn't have been me? Where was I when that happened? Was this someone random? Was this a random attack?
And it is that question police are trying to answer. Was Molly Matheson targeted, or was this a random act? Now, here's what we do know at this point. Though she lived just 2 blocks off campus, Molly was not a student at TCU, but did know the area very well, having graduated from high school in Fort Worth. Primetime Justice producer Stacey Newman has been working this story all day. Stacey, this is a very fresh case. The facts are still coming in tonight. What do we know?
Well, Jean, what we know right now is this 22-year-old, as you said, was found strangled in a bathroom. She was renting this apartment above a garage behind this home. As you said, this is a very upscale community. That community is on edge. Now, an interesting fact we've learned is that police have said they're looking for a suspect or suspects and would not comment when asked about possible forced entry because that location, Jean, being in a bathroom and being strangled, was she caught off guard while she was in the bathroom getting ready, or was she dragged into the bathroom against her will and strangled there? We also have not learned yet if this strangulation was manual or ligature.
And Stacey, we're looking at right now the home where she did have the apartment, renting it above the garage, a very nice area near campus. Elizabeth Campbell is joining us tonight. She is a reporter for TCU 360. She joins us from Fort Worth. Elizabeth, thank you. First of all, what is the area like that we are watching right now on camera, University Place, where this young woman was strangled?
Well, as you mentioned before, it's right by campus. There are many TCU students who live on that street, even more walk past that street every day to get to campus. I walk past that street every day from my apartment. So it's definitely not an area where you've expected something like this to happen.
Wow, wow. And this assailant, this perpetrator of this vicious crime is loose. Authorities are looking for him tonight. They are searching. This is a very active investigation. Elizabeth, what do you know at this point? Because you're right there near the crime scene. What are the facts that you have gathered from police and law enforcement tonight?
So what we can confirm today is she's actually a Tarrant County College student. She started there last summer in 2016, and she was a full-time student there now. So not a TCU student, but there are TCU students who knew her from home from Arkansas. As of right now, TCU police aren't working with Fort Worth police in the investigation, but TCU announced today that they are stepping up the number of TCU police officers, and they're expanding the area that they're patrolling around campus.
Now,
They've
Elizabeth,
also hired off-duty Fort Worth police officers to help as well.
Very, very important, extremely important. Now, Elizabeth, it's actually her mother that found her. And just describe for us where authorities are saying that she was strangled in her apartment.
So that area, it's the apartment above the garage is what her neighbors have told us. And like I said before, it's an area with lots of TCU students, lots of TCU community. When we were out there covering the story, neighbors were coming up to talk to us. It's a very, you know your neighbors kind of area.
And what we are hearing, Elizabeth, is that she was found, her mother found her strangled to death in her bathroom in that apartment. Joining us tonight is Bobby Chacon. He is a retired FBI special agent. He joins us from Palm Springs. Thank you very much. You know, I want to ask you because I think, first of all, about a bathroom. And I think about that there is normally one way in and one way out. Perpetrating a crime in a bathroom, that does have significance, doesn't it? I mean, more times than not.
It very well could, Jean. And in addition to one way in and one way out, there's usually only a small window in a bathroom sometimes that you can't even escape out of. And yes, a bathroom is a place where we go to do most of our personal type business. And so it's a very personal area, not an area that you'd have a stranger normally be in. You know, if you had a stranger in your house doing some work or doing a delivery or something like that. It could also mean she was surprised if in fact the encounter took place in the bathroom. So the physical evidence in the crime scene about where the initial contact took place, whether she was dragged into the bathroom or what happened, will be very crucial to determining, you know, why and how this attack took place.
And joining us tonight is CNN legal analyst Danny Savalos and defense attorney Misty Morris. Danny, when you look at this, is strangulation. We don't know if it was forced entry. They're not saying if she left her door open. But what are your thoughts on this case?
A couple different things. You know, as you talked about, the bathroom is not the very first room that you walk into. Yeah. That demonstrates that this person either knew the area or that she was surprised after the suspect had already gained entrance to do this. The other thing, too, is people think the bathroom is where everything goes to get clean, but they're really not right. I mean, it's amazing how often people think they've washed away the evidence of a crime, washed blood down the drain, or washed their hands. And in fact, they end up leaving a lot of DNA evidence that they thought they were getting rid of by going to the bathroom in the first place, if that was the reason for bringing her in there or surprising her in that room of the house.
And Missy, you know, Danny brings up what we know as forensics, right? Forensics in the bathroom. And crime scene investigators have been going in and out of that apartment since they found her. That's extremely important for solving who may have done this.
Absolutely, because at this point, we don't know if this is a forced entry, a stranger, somebody she knew, somebody that got into the apartment. Maybe she ran into the bathroom because she was in fear. Danny brought up a great point. Perhaps the assailant chose that place because he felt that he could more easily clean away the evidence. But you know those police officers are working 24/7 on this because it's a college town. You've got someone on the loose, and there's lots of other apartments and dorms and all that in the area.
Bobby, I want to ask you, as they do these forensics right here, can they do a rush on DNA? Because if they find unknown male DNA on her, in her, on something in the bathroom, can they expedite that through the CODIS system? And you can explain, everybody, what that is to see if there's a hit, because that could help them.
Sure. Well, the CODIS database matches sample DNA that you submit to known DNA that's been categorized and put into the database of known offenders. And I was a forensic investigator in the FBI myself for the last half of my career. While the samples can be expedited in that they can go to the top of the laboratory's workflow, some of the chemical processes, some of the scientific methods that the samples are subjected to simply can't be rushed because that's the way the chemical reactions work. So yes, in a way, The work can be expedited. It can be moved to the front of the line, but then some of the analysis that takes place simply can't be rushed.
Elizabeth, do we know if there are any surveillance cameras in the area? This is a residential area, but more and more people have surveillance systems, and those cameras go out on driveways, which is critical in this particular case?
There are some cameras around TCU's campus, but we haven't heard of anything around in the neighborhood itself.
Now, Elizabeth, I'm seeing a gate on that driveway. Was that a gated driveway? And did it stay locked?
Yes, neighbors told us that it was a gated driveway in front of the apartment.
Right. Question is if it was unlocked or unlocked because she was expecting someone, or locked and someone climbed over, which isn't inconceivable. Bobby Chacon, you are a retired FBI agent, and when I look at strangulation, you know, they always say that the mode of operation of a crime can be important to determine what type of person would do this. Is strangulation personal? It's a quiet way to kill somebody. I'm sorry to be so obviously gruesome, but that's the fact, right? Versus a knife or a gun. What type of person strangles?
Sure. Well, yeah, you're absolutely right, Gene. The fact that you have to put your hands physically in contact with the other person's neck, the skin, the neck is almost a vulnerable part of our body, right? It can be crushed and things like that. So the fact that you put your hands around that person's neck and squeeze the life out of them, it also means most of the time that you're face to face with the victim as they're taking their last breaths. Their eyes are probably open. You're probably looking that person straight in the eye. It's actually a more personal way than, say, bludgeoning someone to death, even though that might create more blood and more things like that. Strangulation like this, if it's a hand-to-hand strangulation around the neck, it's a face-to-face crime where you're looking the person right in the eye as they're taking their last breaths.
And that is
very,
horrible
very
to think this young 22-year-old girl went through that. Thank you so much. We do have breaking news tonight. Chicago police have made an arrest in the shooting death of criminal court judge Raymond Miles. And later, a murder mystery in Virginia. This woman disappeared without a trace almost 3 years ago. Now her boyfriend is about to go to trial for first-degree murder. We are following new developments tonight in the murder of a criminal court judge in Chicago. About 90 minutes ago, police say they arrested 37-year-old Joshua Smith in connection with the shooting. Now, officers will not say what role Smith played, but he is charged with first-degree murder.
Based upon what we've learned so far, we have charged 37-year-old Joshua Smith with first-degree murder, attempted first-degree murder, and obstruction. As we've seen many times before, Mr. Smith has previously been convicted of armed robbery with a firearm in 2003, to which he served 6 years in Illinois Department of Corrections.
Judge Raymond Miles was shot early Monday morning outside of his home. Police say he was leaving to go to the gym with a female companion when she bumped into a man with a gun. She was shot in the leg, and officers say when the judge verbally confronted the gunman, he was shot 4 times and killed. Police say Joshua Smith did not act alone, and their investigation is far from done.
The motive of this crime is robbery, which we do not believe is random, nor do we believe Smith acted alone. There are many investigative steps to be completed overnight in this case, which remains very open, active, and ongoing.
While they are staying pretty tight-lipped about most of the details, officers do say it was security cameras in the neighborhood that helped track down this suspect. Rob Martier, who is an anchor and reporter for WGN Radio, joins us now from Chicago. Rob, what's the latest?
Yeah, interesting to note what you just mentioned. The camera is certainly instrumental in capturing at least one of the suspects. There could be possibly one more out there as well. Ballistics also played a role in this case when they grabbed the casings from Monday morning's shooting that killed Judge Miles. They also were able to link that to a previous robbery as well. So there were a lot of moving parts to this case as we move forward and as police continue to unravel this unfortunate event.
Now, Rob, isn't it true that the license plate that they were able to capture from that surveillance video wasn't the actual license plate of the car?
That is correct. Yeah, it's a 2005 red Pontiac that was seen through footage from neighborhood surveillance cameras. What they did then, of course, was narrow that down, and they noticed that the plates had been switched out. Obviously, the suspect and or suspects thought they'd be able to elude police by doing that. They quickly ascertained that's what happened, the police, that is, and they also basically cleared the owner of that car of any wrongdoing as well, but they were able to link it back to Joshua Smith.
Now, Rob, they do believe that this was a targeted robbery, had nothing to do with the judge, his position as a criminal court judge in the Chicago area. Was anything taken?
Well, it's interesting. They have been pretty tight-lipped about that aspect of the investigation. They did say, as you just suggested, the motive was robbery and was not random. They made a point to make sure they highlighted that at the press conference earlier tonight. So moving forward and probably into tomorrow at the bond hearing, more details that they have will probably come out and will finally reveal what, in fact, went down early Monday morning.
And this is an active investigation. Even tonight, they are searching for the second person. They say that this person did not act alone, the person that is in custody. But it is ballistics that played an extremely important role in the apprehension of Joshua Smith. Listen to the press conference. It was just minutes ago.
Part of the physical evidence in this case includes ballistics or shell casings from the gun. We immediately ordered a trace on those ballistics and learned that the gun used in this tragic incident was also used in an armed robbery that occurred this past January in the 7th District, where a victim was shot non-fatally.
And Bobby Chacon, a former FBI agent, joins us again from Palm Springs. Bobby, this is fascinating to me that they were able to take the casings they found lying around on the ground, most likely, and absolutely putting them through a technology that were able to match casings from a robbery to a gun, a robbery in January.
Sure.
How was that done?
Well, you know, the casings on the shell casings are actually, the markings on the casings are almost like a fingerprint for each individual gun. And so probably back in January, the casings from that non-fatal robbery were analyzed and put into the database, and then it's just like a fingerprint database. When they got these casings, a semi-automatic pistol ejects its casings when it's fired. They collected those and they did the match, and
so
they put those.
Do you think that they physically compared one to the other? There's not a system. There's not a technology like DNA, for instance. You put it through the system and there's a match?
There's a numerical scoring system, and so you narrow it down, and then ultimately, you know, you have to, at some point, just like a fingerprint, you have to do an exact match. So this is a judge investigation, a murder investigation. They probably threw a lot of resources at this and got it done as quickly as they possibly could.
Yeah. Danny Savalos, here's the thing that I was thinking about today. The female victim was initially the one that confronted the robber. He shot her once in the lower torso, in the leg. Then the judge comes out and starts to verbally confront him. He shoots the judge multiple times and shoots to kill.
It's very, very confusing, because you would think if you're going to leave no witnesses, leave no witnesses
kill her
at
before
all.
you leave, right?
Absolutely. And even firing at the lower extremity, while it could hit the femoral artery and certainly be fatal, it does evince some sort of intent to just injure or cripple and not necessarily kill. Or it could have just been bad shooting by a bad criminal.
Right, right. Either way. Misty, this is another thing I'm struck with. This guy, former felon Joshua Smith, has been charged with murder, attempted murder, and obstruction. Wasn't honest with police. It doesn't matter if he was the shooter or if he drove the getaway car. He can be charged with the principal crime if he drove the car and they got away.
Yeah, it's classic accomplice liability. If you're involved in the planning, commission, or the getaway of the crime, you can be charged with that murder. And if it's confirmed that this man was a part of that conspiracy, we don't know what part he played. We don't know how the police actually identified him. But if that's the case, then absolutely, Jean, he can be charged with the murder of this judge.
Right. We don't know how he was identified, but Bobby Chacon, there is a living victim who is a witness, an eyewitness. She's been in the hospital because she was shot, but do you believe that they presented her with a picture of this man for her to identify?
Well, if not a picture, they certainly did a six-pack or you know, a photo lineup type of thing to her. I would imagine they did that at the very least. And I would imagine, you know, this is a felony murder type deal with him, and I would imagine that the detectives are working very hard on interrogating him, and I'd be very surprised if within the next 24 hours and overnight we don't have a lot more information coming out, and maybe even the second suspect named.
Exactly. Now, Danny, do you think that this guy, Joshua Smith, is he going to start talking?
He might. You know, anytime you have a potential co-conspirator, they may approach him with some kind of offer, especially if he claims, I wasn't the actual shooter, it was somebody else. It really depends on the facts, but that is a very, very effective technique, is to lean on one person, let them know what they're facing, and sooner or later, there is no loyalty among thieves. There really isn't.
Yeah, and there'd been a lot of robberies in the area. All right, Chicago. Nearly 3 years ago, a Virginia nurse just vanished, and she has not been seen since. Now this man, her boyfriend, is facing first-degree murder charges and could be sentenced to death. And did a film winning 2 awards at this year's Oscars have anything to do with this child's death? New York police say yes, and now his parents are charged with his murder.